We are slaying monsters.
Don't let the ghosts and the ghouls disturb you, darling.
I think I'm ready to sign the lease.
The lease on what?
Oh, the lease on this little building endeavor I have going on. It's just a little place on the shores of Mahone Bay in Nova Scotia. Oh, I don't think you were part of this. Yeah, I bought this club. Mm-hmm. It's just on the bay. It's going to be really nice. I'm going to turn it into a comedy club.
Oh yeah? What's it going to be called?
Yeah, I'm going to open it up. We're going to call it Joke Island.
Oh man,
yeah.
That is great.
Really, it's right next to that cigar shop there on the corner.
What cigar shop?
Oh, Smoke Island.
Oh, right, the one that's right next door to that medicinal marijuana shop called Toke Island.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, yeah. There's the place that sells the farming equipment.
What's that place?
Yoke Island.
Oh right, Yoke Island. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep. Oh, there's that place that sells the wedding dresses and like wedding accoutrements. It's like a wedding planning agency called Bespoke Island.
Hang on, I got a really good one. And then there's the there's that store. It's kind of like the antique store that specializes in European architecture, music, and art of the 17th and 18th centuries, following the mannerism and style characterized by ornate detail. You know, Baroque Island.
Oh right, Baroque Island. Yes.
Yeah. Man, that's some quality puns.
Excellent.
You
Yes.
know it's going to be a good time when you started off with puns.
Yes. Today we're going to talk about an island that's really, really well known for its birch trees, and it is called, suitingly, Oak Island.
Is this something you actually know?
No, this is just something I made up.
Oh, there are oak. Well, we'll talk about.
Are there
we will
even
talk
oaks
about. We will
on
talk
Oak
about
Island?
the trees on Oak Island.
Okay, we freaking better,
Yes,
man. Or
we
I'm
will
leaving.
talk about the trees.
I'm leaving if we don't, because this is what I'm here for.
I am here to learn about flora on Nova Scotian islands.
I'm excited about that. I don't care about the treasure. Damn it.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully somebody will find some treasure here. Otherwise, it's going to be called Baroque Island, if you know what I mean.
The treasure were the puns we made along the way.
Exactly. Oh my god. Anyway, wow. Who are we? We're slaying monsters. And across the table we got Matt.
Hey.
And I'm EJ.
Yo.
And we're going to talk about Oak Island.
Yes,
Part
we
1.
are. We are going to talk about the mystery of Oak Island. EJ, you know all about Oak Island because we got a little obsessed with the series 2-3 years ago, something like that.
Yeah, we did.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then like it kind of dropped off for me because nothing really happened, and so I stopped wanting to watch it.
Well, and unfortunately, that's the problem with a lot of these types of series. Mm-hmm. Because truthfully, if in season 2 they dug down to 196 feet and they hit a treasure chest, pulled it up, and they were like, oh my god, this has the initials William Kidd in it, and then they opened it and it was full of Spanish doubloons, that's your show. And there's 2 seasons and that's the end of it. You know, they're like, oh wow, we found it, cool. You know,
right.
in a way, the show is actually predicated on them not finding the treasure of Oak Island, in much the same way that finding Bigfoot, they can't find Bigfoot. If they find Bigfoot, the show is over.
Right.
You know? But I do feel like Ghost Adventures and ghost shows do a better job of having the occasional time where you're like, oh, cool, that's a really good piece of evidence. Mm-hmm. Whereas Oak Island, it was always just kind of like, yeah, we drilled another hole. There wasn't anything down there.
Right. Actually, most of the show consists of the poor narrator having to remind people who everybody's names is and who's there. And it's just like, oh my God.
Every beginning of every scene was always like, we're here in the war room with Rick and Marty Lagina, their partner, Craig Tester, and Jack Bagley. they're talking to metal detectorist Gary Drayton. And then they just
Along
run
with
through,
Peter Fernetti.
yeah, who, along with Peter Fernetti, have found something interesting in the swamp. And then they're just like, yeah, we found some stones, and we found these, like, metal shards. We think that they're part of an aluminum can. And like, come on, guys.
Over at the digging site with Dan Nolan. And then they just, like, continue to name these people.
Dan Blankenship.
Dan Blankenship and Fred Nolan.
Fred Nolan.
Who's no longer with us.
Yes.
Dan
Dan Blankenship is not either.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Yeah, they both passed on.
Oh.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's sad. And that's also... Okay, so then the narrator has one less name to name.
You're bringing us down already.
I'm sorry.
Jeez.
Well, hey, wait. Isn't that the
Yeah, so
legend?
And you know, maybe can I recite the beginning of Oak Island? I'm not sure if this is
Well, no, just paraphrase. Just say that in order to find the treasure, how many need to die?
Oh yeah. So the idea here is that there were 6 people who had died, and there was a legend that said that 7 needed to die before the treasure was revealed. So technically, I guess we hit 7, because really we hit 7 when Fred Nolan died, and then Dan Blankenship just died 3 years ago, I think.
Okay.
So we're now at 8.
Okay.
And the treasure has not been revealed yet. But in my research, I should also say that the only place I've ever found any rumor about 7 people needing to die to reveal the treasure was the beginning of Oak Island, the series Oak Island. That doesn't seem to be anything that was written down anywhere in any form.
Yeah, there's nothing like that.
No.
So it's just the show being dramatic,
It's
which
just
is great.
the show.
Good for them.
Yeah.
Good for them.
I mean, and you gotta have a hook, right? And the beginning is
Yeah.
actually really awesome.
It
Like
is
the
a really
opening
cool
sequence
beginning.
of Oak Island is phenomenal.
It is really cool. Okay, so let's lead us in here. What the hell give us some context.
Yes, because some of our listeners may be familiar with Oak Island. Some of our listeners might be like, what the hell are you talking about?
Yeah.
Where can I get to this comedy club?
Yeah, get me there first.
I need to hear some good, solid Eastern Canadian jokes.
Yes.
So, nestled off the southern coast of Nova Scotia is a small, tree-covered island with a bottomless mystery. This privately owned island has been the target of treasure hunters for over 200 years. If rumors and legends are true, a vast fortune lies buried under the island, sealed off in a complex maze of booby-trapped tunnels. This treasure, claimed to be long-lost bounty from a ruthless pirate or an ancient secret society, has captivated archaeologists for centuries. Even today, seekers still continue the search, making it perhaps the most expensive treasure hunt in history. The lore, legend, and truth of the mystery of Oak Island will be the subject of this expansive series. Now, my primary source for this series is going to be the book The Secret Treasure of Oak Island by Darcy O'Connor, who's kind of the authority on the whole thing. Darcy O'Connor has been studying Oak Island for something like 40 years and documenting it. Now, I'll also be using Joe Nichols' article, The Secrets of Oak Island from the Skeptical Inquirer, as kind of a balancing article. Because Darcy O'Connor is very much in the camp of there's something there, and Joe Nichols is very much in a Joe Nichols way. The only thing there are owls. No, Joe Nichols has a very good grasp on some of the things that are going on there, which I think is pretty cool. And we're going to need to reference that article pretty extensively a little while later. But you want to jump into it, EJ?
Yeah, let's get into it.
All right. Now, buried treasure is a tale as old as probably human history. As far back as the 2nd century, the Dacian king, Decebalus, literally went out of his way to keep his valuables safe. Using enslaved labor, he diverted the flow of the Sargetia River with a series of dams, and he buried a cache of gold and silver coins in the now dry riverbed. So what they did is they dammed the river until they just had the riverbed. They dug up the bottom, and they put stuff there. And then, with the treasure safe, he ordered the flow of the river be restored, and he covered it making it inaccessible underneath the river.
Unless you had control of the river, which is just him.
Exactly. This story comes to us from the Roman historian Dio Cassius, who also relates how the treasure was discovered. After a defeat in battle, one of Decebalus's nobles, or soldiers, depending on which part you read, revealed the location to the Romans, who then dammed the river and dug up the soggy treasure. That's such a cool story, the notion of a treasure that's so valuable that this ruler would move heaven and earth to keep it safe.
Yeah.
But in recent years, some historians have re-examined this tale and have been trying to find, what's the actual truth in this? Not did this happen? We know that it happened, but more why? Why would he do this? Why? Was there a value that he saw in the treasure, or was it maybe something else? In an article for National Geographic, German archaeologist Barbara Deppert-Lippitz theorizes that the treasure in the river wasn't hidden for selfish reasons. She believes it was actually a sacrifice to the gods.
Oh.
She examined Decebalus's war with the Roman emperor, and to her, Decebalus, he wanted to enlist the help of the gods to assist him in battle, So he was making an offering to them. And one of the things that he did is he took his robes and other fragile textile items, and he hid them in caves along the river. So in her view, Dio Cassius was wrong about this being an attempt to hide the treasure. She says, water and caves were considered portals to another world. These aren't hoards, they're sacrificial deposits.
Oh, that's so cool. That's nicer than killing people.
Well, yeah, sure. Right. You give them something of yourself, right? You give them the coins, you give them your robes, all of the things that you've garnered in this life. And I guess the gods are like, this is really cool. This robe fits me well. I guess I'll help you kill some people.
Right. I will make you successful in battle.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. The Roman authors who retold the tale later on, they didn't understand the customs of this more tribal culture. And so they misinterpreted their actions through the more civilized Roman lens. There's evidence that the Dacians didn't even use gold and silver coins as currency. Because when they dug up the coins, there was no wear on them. They were freshly minted coins that they buried in the river.
Oh.
If it was traded daily, it would have some kind of wear and all of that. But these were pristine. So the assumption that modern historians have is that they were religious artifacts, not money.
Oh, or maybe he had them minted just for the gods.
It's also possible. But still, I feel like you're splitting hairs at that point. If you're minting coins specifically to give to the gods and you're not using them for trade, then they're sort of religious artifacts.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But to me, it's you go into the U.S. Treasury and you're like, hey, put a few aside for me.
Oh, yeah. Put some aside for Jesus.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Yeah. Like the other ones
Sure.
are used, but these are not. That's what I'm saying.
No, yeah, I guess that's true. It certainly could have been that. I think the point being that it's not like Decebalus, he didn't raid his piggy bank and then stick these coins under his mattress, right?
Right.
They were not coins that were in circulation. They were specifically minted for this purpose. Yes.
Yeah, that's very God-like. It's like we don't want them to have had the grubby hands on them,
Right. Well, yeah, and you wouldn't, right?
The gods can have these.
Don't give them the gross ones.
Yeah, exactly. We don't know where those have been.
Yeah. This one fell in horse poop.
Yeah, exactly.
Or maybe that was a prized one.
Maybe it was. Lucky.
Yeah.
Lucky coin.
Yeah, this was the fastest horse in the kingdom. I think as historians, or at least enjoyers of history, I'm not sure I can consider myself a historian, but enjoyers of history, we have to be careful not to recontextualize what we see and find just to fit our narrative. Our goal should always be to understand the past from the past's perspective. Unlike Dio Cassius, we need to understand the Dacian reasons for burying the treasure from their viewpoint, not from ours. Now, when we talk about buried treasure, EJ, what's the first thing that comes to your mind?
Gold.
Sure. Okay. What kind of gold?
Pieces of 8.
Yeah. Pirate gold, right? Yeah. Pirates. The idea of like this band of pirates hiding a chest of doubloons on a desert island, that's such an iconic image, right?
Yes.
So, do you think this really happened?
Do I think that they really buried pieces of 8 regularly?
Mm-hmm.
I think that if they did, we would have been finding it. How much of it did we actually find in our diggings?
That's a great question. So let's talk about the history of pirates for a second. While illegal attacks by bands of independent sailors, piracy, is probably as old as the invention of the ship itself, the vast majority of piracy began as privateering. Privateering, of course, is when a country, say Great Britain, authorizes the use of illegal and illicit means to attack and plunder merchant ships. As a captain, you would receive what was called a letter of marque from your home country. And that was essentially a license that you were free to wreak havoc on any ships from any other country as long as your home country was at war with them. Mm-hmm. So you could go and you could fuck up Spain, but you can't fuck up Britain. And, if Britain happens to be in a treaty with France at the time, don't fuck up France either. Mm-hmm. But if France pisses off Britain, then all bets are off.
Right.
So during the Age of the Sail, which we generally classify between the 16th and 19th centuries, Europe had put its fingerprints all over the Caribbean. Spain in particular had embroiled themselves in a very lucrative shipping enterprise. And they were moving tobacco, sugar, lumber, and other goods from the islands to the European mainland. They had also been pillaging all of the Mayan and Incan settlements there and were transporting shipments of gold and silver aboard treasure galleons. And it's no surprise that these, along with all the useful goods like lumber and sugar, were perfect targets for privateers and independent pirates alike. It's also worth pointing out that although we tend to talk about pirates seizing treasure galleons, they also attack ships carrying enslaved people too. In fact, the most famous privateer of the time, Sir Francis Drake, made a name for himself by capturing and selling Portuguese slave cargo to the Spanish settlements. And that pissed off the Spanish, because the English were essentially cornering the market of enslaved people. So they would go and they would attack the Portuguese, because the Portuguese were actually selling the enslaved people to Spain. Mm-hmm. But the English would swoop in here, attack the Portuguese, take those enslaved people as cargo, and then sell them to Spain at a markup.
So fucked up, the whole thing. I'm reading a book called Black as Fuck History right now, and it's amazing. And he talks about how the Portuguese kind of started this whole mess. It just makes me think of what he was talking about in the history of Portuguese slave trade, basically. Yeah,
the Portuguese had a massive market by taking people from Africa and shipping them across the Atlantic Ocean to the Caribbean and the east coast of North America.
Yeah, they started it and everybody else thought that was just a great idea, so they all they did it too.
Yep. So as the British were stealing this cargo, that pissed off the Spanish. And then the Spanish attacked Drake, who was sailing under a captain named William Hawkins. Drake fled during the battle, leaving Hawkins to fend for himself against the Spanish fleet.
Oh, come on, Drake.
Hawkins survived, probably unfortunately for Drake. Mm-hmm. And he eventually confronted Drake back in England. And so that whole thing left a bitter taste in Drake's mouth, and Drake was kind of... he wasn't real well liked in the British Navy because of all of this. They couldn't quite trust him, right?
Yeah.
So Drake turned all of his resources to attacking the Spanish ships in the West Indies as payback.
Oh, so he was trying to make up for it, you're saying, or?
No, he just didn't like that the Spanish attacked him.
Okay. It's weird that he decided to be brave all of a sudden.
Well.
Okay. Maybe he said, I'm a changed man.
Leading his own fleet and now under contract from the British crews, he headed back to the Caribbean to get his revenge. And in 1572, he sieged and captured a settlement in Nombre del Dios in Panama. While there, Drake encountered a group of Cimarrones, who were previously enslaved Africans, now living in Panama, who had escaped their slave owners. Mm-hmm. Francis Drake is a very complicated figure in history. He found early success through this slave trade, selling them to the Spanish. Mm-hmm. And he clearly participated. But he was also a young sailor under the tutelage of a seasoned captain, this William Hawkins. We don't really know his thoughts on the practice or his involvement in it. But we do know that when he met a Cimarrone man named Diego, he agreed to join forces with them against the common enemy, the Spanish. I'd love to say that Drake, after seeing the horrors of the slave trade firsthand, swore to distance himself from it and help any enslaved people to better lives. I can say that Diego, his liaison to the Cimarrones, became a very good friend and confidant and served as Drake's right-hand man for years aboard his voyages before being granted freedom.
But, if he was a good dude, he should have freed him immediately.
I know.
What the hell?
I mean, yeah, and they were together. They did Drake's circumnavigation of the globe in the 1570s. He was there with Drake. Mm-hmm. It's hard to say. This
is the shit that gets under that bothers the crap out of me, because I'm like, all these people are like, oh, they were good people because after 40 years they freed this enslaved person. I'm like, you fucking suck.
And the British and pirate buffs are the ones that put Drake up on this pedestal as this hero of the early days of piracy. Mm-hmm. And he's one of the ones where when we talk about the pirates' engagement with the slave trade, and how they were more liberal and more willing to accept the slaves to come on and be part of their crew.
Mm-hmm. It's not so black and white though, right?
It's not.
They weren't all, yeah.
That's the problem, right? Mm-hmm. History is messy and it's full of holes.
Yeah, and unfortunately, I feel like the bar is really low.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's who they can say, oh, he's a good guy.
Exactly, yeah.
It took him decades, but he did free a person.
Right. The truth is probably somewhere in the middle. Mm-hmm. He probably wasn't as hard-lined as Captain Hawkins, but he probably also wasn't oh, I'm going to save everybody who's,
Yeah. I wonder if he didn't save Hawkins because he just didn't like him.
I kind of get that sense, There's a part of me that thinks that Drake left Hawkins, and he went right back to England. And so I kind of wonder if he was well, if Hawkins dies, then I don't need to work under him anymore. Mm-hmm. And I can just be on my own. And then Hawkins showed up and Drake was well, shit.
Exactly. It wasn't that he was scared. He was scared. Mm-hmm. It was that he didn't like him.
Yeah, it was a convenient way to get this other guy out from Drake's future.
Yes.
While working with the Cimarrones, who knew the Panama countryside, Drake and his men ambushed and captured a Spanish gold train. This is one of the ones that was working in, the countryside, farming out all of that gold and shipping it to the coast where it would be picked up by the galleons. So they ambushed that train, took all of that gold for themselves. They ended up with about 20 tons of gold and silver.
How do you even carry that?
Well, this was a problem that they had, because they had been successful in their land-based mission, but the ships that were guarding them had a harder time. And by the time Drake and his men got their plunder back to the shore, the naval battle was over and the ships were gone. His ships actually had to flee.
Oh.
Drake has no way to transport this much treasure. Nothing, right? But he knew that he had to keep it out of Spanish hands. So with the Spanish fleet, reinforcements were on their way, intending to, pick up this treasure and take it back to Spain. And knowing that he can't possibly move all of this stuff, he has no choice. And so he ordered his men to bury the treasure along the beach and in the nearby jungle. This is the first recorded instance of pirates burying treasure.
Oh, wow, cool.
Yeah.
So that started everything.
Exactly. Yeah. With all of that secured, Drake and his men built a raft and sailed 12 miles up the coast of Panama to his base camp. Once arriving there, the men at camp came out and they greeted him, and they knew that the naval battle had been unsuccessful, right? Mm-hmm. And so they saw Drake come in on this makeshift raft with nothing, right? And they're like, oh, fuck, this was like a massive defeat. And according to one account, Drake pulled a coin purse from his belt and tossed it on the ground, and all these coins spilled out, and he gave them a big grin and said he got his revenge on the Spanish.
Nice. How dramatic.
Yeah, right? 4 months later, Drake set sail for Plymouth with a fleet loaded down with his treasure.
Plymouth?
Mm-hmm.
Like
England.
Plymouth,
England. No.
Okay.
He wasn't going to the Pilgrims. He wasn't like, I'll take this to Thanksgiving.
Where's all their money then? Yeah.
No.
Okay.
No, we're talking about the 1570s or 80s at this point. Yeah, no.
I thought you were going to say, and
Plymouth, England.
And then they went from Plymouth Rock to Oak Island, and that's where it's buried.
Well, we'll get there.
The end.
We'll get there, but it wasn't Drake.
Okay.
Yeah. One of the fun and also frustrating aspects of pirate history is that there's just so little of it. These ships were performing illegal acts, and most of the time against foreign powers and under the pseudo orders of their native country. Because, the country was always kind of like, you can do whatever you want. And whenever you let people do that, you always end up in a place where it's like, well, how are you actually just attacking the ships you're supposed to?
They wouldn't stop.
Exactly. Right.
They're not going to stop.
Yeah. People just want to make money.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Logbooks were evidence. And if you were caught, especially by another country, this could be treasonous, or they could just execute you on the spot. Mm-hmm. So true pirates wouldn't log things like, oh, this is where I buried my treasure, mm-hmm. right? A lot of our pirate history comes from a single book, A General History of Pirates, pirates spelled with a Y, written by Captain Charles Johnson. This is a 2-volume work that chronicles the escapades of some of the most famous pirates in history. Edward Blackbeard Teach, Calico Jack Rackham, Mary Read and Anne Bonny, Israel Hands, Stede Bonnet, Charles Vane, and all those other people that you know from Black Sails and Our Flag Means Death.
Right.
Additionally, Johnson's book has kind of been called into question. Do you know about this weird history with it?
No.
Okay. Historians kind of dispute how factual this actually is. Because most of the stories, when you sit down and you read them, they're like action adventure type swashbuckle-y stories, and they all kind of paint the pirates into high seas mythological characters, more like comic book characters than real, actual people. Take the story of Sam Bellamy. You know Sam Bellamy?
That name rings a bell.
Okay, Black Bellamy.
You didn't catch that at all, did you?
That name rings a bell. Ha, nice. Okay.
Hey, come see me on Joke Island. I'll be here all day.
Yeah. Black Bellamy, as he was called by his crew, was a very dashing figure. So he was always in expensive coats, and he fought with dueling pistols and a cutlass. And he became famous for being a very democratic captain. He had very fair, intelligent conduct during his raids. He's one of these pirates where, you had the ruthless pirate stories, but then you also have the no, I'm more of a gentleman. I'm going to spare your life. I'm going to, Mm-hmm. After one of his most famous victories, Bellamy offered the captain of the poor vessel the chance to join his crew, but he refused. So Bellamy actually wanted to let them go, but his crew voted to destroy the ship, and Bellamy agreed to the terms. And what he said to the captain was this: "You are a sneaking puppy, and so are all those who submit to be governed by laws which rich men have made for their own security. They vilify us, the scoundrels do, when there is only this difference. They rob the poor under the cover of law, forsooth, and we plunder the rich under the protection of our own courage."
That is so cool. Did he really say that?
We don't know.
We don't know?
We don't know. I mean, I would love to say that he did, but that's kind of the they called him the Robin Hood of the seas.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. I was thinking about Robin Hood and...
His career contains more of these stories, like honorably robbing the rich for his notion of democracy. Was it true? Was it a fabrication? Was it maybe a literary indictment of the rich and the growing frustration with wealth and power that ultimately pushed the idea of enlightenment and philosophy and drove the establishment of the United States? We don't really know. I kind of think it can be both. Captain Johnson, the author of A General History of Pirates, is often considered to be a pen name for Daniel Defoe. And that's how it's actually credited in Project Gutenberg's online version of the book. You know Daniel Defoe?
That name sounds very familiar.
Yeah. Robinson Crusoe.
Okay, yeah.
But the only evidence that Daniel Defoe wrote this book is because it matches his style, which isn't great evidence,
Yeah, everybody kind of probably wrote very similarly back then.
Also, like, you're writing a book about pirates and ships and swashbuckling and stuff. Like, he could just be imitating Daniel Defoe's style of writing. He could be doing it because it's fun. He could be doing it because he read a lot of Defoe and that was just naturally the way he wrote.
He likes him, yeah.
I like the idea that Johnson was either the pen name or real name of an actual pirate crew person who wanted to remain anonymous. This idea would explain the mythic status of the pirates in the book, because this person would have sailed with them and would have kind of treated them as like these guys were great, And the extensive nautical language throughout is also supported by at least somebody who was a sailor, because it's written by somebody who knows their stuff. The most likely candidate seems to be a man named Nathaniel Mist, whose early life was spent as a sailor in the West Indies. Now, talking about these more romanticized pirates, there is one name that is synonymous with buried treasure. Captain Kidd. What do you know about Captain Kidd, EJ?
I know that he was hanged, I
You're
think.
right. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, you're absolutely right. You got something there.
That's all I got. That's all I know. It's funny because I was actually thinking you would mention Blackbeard.
Blackbeard, for despite Blackbeard and his travels, Blackbeard is not really connected to Oak Island at all.
Well, but he's a treasure. He is connected to buried treasure.
He is connected to buried treasure. You know what? The problem is, I could talk about a lot of pirates.
Yes, I know. We got to keep this relatively short, right?
But yeah. So Edward Teach, Blackbeard, allegedly buried some treasure on, what's the name of that island? It's in the Delaware River off of Philly.
Petty's Island.
Petty?
Petty or Petty's?
Petty, yeah. Up here, which was bizarre to me when I first heard it, but apparently, there's rumor that he made his way all the way up the Delaware River. That was one of the things that was very surprising to me as I started doing this research, because initially you hear these names, right? Mm-hmm. Captain Kidd, and you're like, oh, pirates, West Indies, Caribbean. Mm-hmm. Why the hell is Captain Kidd associated with Nova Scotia?
Yeah, that's really interesting.
But
what's he doing?
Boston was a huge port city. And that's the connection. I didn't realize this, but you had all of these fleets coming over from England. They would land at Boston, have, onloading, offloading, repairs, maintenance, whatever you needed, and then they would sail to the West Indies. It was very unusual for there to be a direct sail from London to Jamaica or something like that.
Yeah, it was very important for them to put a port in the New World so that they had somewhere to stop.
Absolutely.
It's extremely strategic.
Yeah. So as such, a lot of the pirates actually did make their way up the east coast of the United States too. Mm.
And so that's how we get Captain Kidd.
And that's how you get Captain Kidd.
Moving his way up. Okay.
Exactly, yeah. Now, Kidd originally started his career as a privateer, commissioned by the first Earl of Belmont in New England to hunt down pirates in their waters. Now, Kidd had been appointed because of his loyalty, but from the very beginning, he had this rebellious nature to him. Even before he made it out of port, He failed to salute a naval officer on a passing yacht. So he was on his ship. This is the maiden voyage of his ship and his crew, right? He's newly appointed captain, and they're sailing out of the harbor, and there's a naval vessel there, and they're standing at attention, and they expect everybody to salute. Well, they didn't salute. I don't know why. I don't know if it was a mistake. I don't know if it was intentional. But it did piss off the naval vessel, and so they fired a warning shot across Kidd's bow.
Damn. Of
this brand new ship. And Kidd is the type of person that doesn't tolerate that shit.
Yeah.
And so, in response, Kidd and his crew, quote, turned and slapped their backsides in disdain.
Oh, that's so great.
So, yeah, the guy you just appointed to hunt down pirates basically just mooned the captain of a naval yacht before he left port. What could possibly go wrong here?
Seriously, though, that's the guy I would want hunting down pirates, because he can think like them already. He already knows.
Oh, and he was thinking like them, and it's just about to get worse. Because they couldn't let this go unpunished. So
No.
literally, he did his maiden voyage. He didn't even make it out of the harbor.
Oh my God.
The naval vessel stopped him. They brought all of his crew off the ship. They enlisted the bulk of them and left him with like a skeleton crew and was like, this is your punishment. Now you have to work harder on this ship. And so Kidd was like, well, fuck you guys. And he sailed to New York to get a replacement crew. But when he got replacements, they were mostly criminals and former pirates.
Oh, there's your problem.
Yeah. So now you have this guy who's already a little bit rebellious. Mm-hmm. He, like you said, he kind of thinks like a pirate. He's just outfitted himself with a crew of criminals and pirates. And he's going off and he's gonna go hunt some pirates.
Oh, that sounds like such a fun ship.
It's unclear whether he intended to like turn into a pirate the whole time or if he was just like kind of shitty at locating them. But instead of hunting pirates, he just became one of them.
That's so cool.
In 1698, he took a French ship called the Quida Merchant and ended up with a sizable haul of silks, linens, minerals, and opium from that ship. Now, to him, this was within his letter of marque because Britain was at war with France. Totally acceptable. For years, privateers had served as basically unofficial military vessels, you know, and they have carte blanche. You just go ahead, attack them. We don't care, you know. And then alongside that was, you want to take their shit? Okay, yeah, you can take it, you can sell it, not a big deal.
Sounds like a great job.
But when Kidd made it to the West Indies, he found himself the target of pirate hunters from Britain because the, you know, fickle attitudes of the nobles had shifted, and Kidd was too much of a nuisance to allow him to continue his escapades. So, realizing that he was in danger and his ship was now marked, Kidd sold what he could in the West Indies before hopping on a new ship and sailing for Boston. See, the governor of Boston was the Earl of Belmont, the same guy who issued Kidd's original letter of marque. And he promised Kidd, hey, if you make it to Boston, I'll pardon you. But Kidd was well aware that he was transporting stolen goods, which could link him to piracy and endanger that pardon. So he made a stop on Garnier's Island, just off of Long Island, New York, and buried the remaining treasure there, working with the landowner, John Garnier. Some reports even have him burying another cache on other islands in the area.
I didn't know that he was burying treasure in the New York Islands.
Yes, he was.
That's really cool. So he must have trusted this Garnier guy.
He did. Yeah.
I don't know. He must have known him from the past or something. You don't just give some rando your treasure.
I don't know it was so much that he trusted John Garnier, but allegedly he said to John, if I call for it, meaning the treasure, like if I come back for the treasure, and it is gone, I will have your head or your son's.
Oh, so he didn't really have much of a choice. Okay.
Hard to say. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But this is all after the fact. It's
Yeah.
also possible that John Gardner was working with him. And when people were kind of looking, oh, is there any Captain Kidd treasure buried here? John Gardner was like, yeah, there was this. He made me bury it. He said he was going to kill me and my son.
Yes.
While like very slyly pocketing like 2 coin purses of doubloons. You know?
I mean, that's what I would say for sure.
Absolutely, yeah.
He forced me to do this.
He made me do it. Oh, no. Yeah.
Yep. He's like, make it look good, kid. The kid punches him in the face. And then like a year later, they're like, oh, he punched me once, I swear.
Yeah. It was right here. It healed.
Yeah.
It healed. Still a little tender.
Exactly.
So Kidd arrived in Boston in 1699, hoping to secure his freedom. But the Earl, who had issued the original letter of marque, he was in danger of being implicated in Kidd's piracy. Because essentially, to the British government, he was complicit. You gave this guy a boat, You told us he was going to be okay, and he's been wreaking havoc all over the Caribbean.
You have a bad sense of people.
Yeah. You probably should have known when he showed his butt to you in the harbor, So the Earl knew that pardoning him was just going to make things worse. And instead of a peaceful meeting, the Earl had Kidd arrested. He just wants to distance himself from the whole affair and knows, if I bring this pirate to the British, I'm going to look great. Kidd was extradited to England, where he was tried and convicted within 1 day.
Whoa.
He was hanged publicly in 1701. The rope broke on the first attempt, and he had to be rehanged, this time successfully. His body was left hanging over the River Thames as a cautionary tale to other pirates.
So how long had this been since the mooning of the ship to his hanging? How many years was he notorious?
The mooning was 1696. He was hanged in 1701.
Whoa.
Yeah.
When I think of pirate lore and the legacy of a pirate, I think, they were pirates for decades or a decade at least.
The life of a pirate was very, very short.
Yes, this is what I'm realizing. And he managed to get such a reputation in such a short amount of time. It's really impressive, I have to say.
Yeah.
Very impressive.
And there's this whole other thing. I mean, I'm really kind of obsessed with pirate history and pirate lore. And there was this whole sort of mentality that was brought to the table because everybody knew that. Everybody knew that their time was numbered. And so there was almost a cavalier nature to it, too, because you're like, I'm probably going to die. I'm probably going to, the ship's going to sink, I'm going to get shot or stabbed, I'm going to be hanged, whatever. But I'm going to do everything I can to live the best life possible, at least for the short time that I have.
Yeah, and many of them didn't get to live long, even in the best of circumstances.
Right.
Many people back then, their lifespan was shorter.
For sure.
You can see why they would be a little bit more cavalier with their lives.
And we're talking, we're talking about the late 1600s, early 1700s at this point, and this is getting into a whole other conversation about pirates, but you have basically a very developed caste system in the New World and in England. You have the nobles who are living relatively well, they're well fed, they have money, they go to their fancy parties and stuff like that. And then you have the common people who are not great. Life expectancy is poor, you don't have any money, you don't have any say in the government. You're very much just kind of the machines that the nobles use to further themselves.
Right.
And then all of a sudden you have these pirates that are like, no, we are completely in control of our own destiny. And that was so appealing for everyone. And it's part of the reason why pirates were romanticized so much in the 1600s, 1700s, because of that. Because we were kind of, as a Western society, starting to break off the shackles of this government that is not really a government. We're questioning the monarchy, and we're going to talk about all of this later when we talk about the Illuminati and the Freemasons. But yeah, we're questioning the way that rule is being done. We're questioning about the individual's role in society and all of these things. And the piracy was like, just come and do that. You can come on the ship and be part of a democracy.
Yeah, just mind blowing.
Yeah.
My friend once told me, not related to this, but said, I want a good life, not a long life.
I love it.
And that's what makes me think of piracy.
Yeah. Was that an excuse to, like, eat something really fatty or something like that?
I think it was something like that, or it was like smoking cigarettes or something like that.
Okay, yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I feel like that's the type of thing that everybody says when they're like, I'm going to consume half of this pig right now.
Yeah.
I want a good life, not a long life.
Exactly.
So the scare tactic, meaning, having this dead pirate hanging over a river, it worked, kinda. Shortly after Kidd's execution, John Gardner revealed the location of the treasure to the Earl of Belmont, and it was dug up and recovered. Maybe.
Oh.
There's a whole mess of questions surrounding the end of Kidd's life. How much treasure did he sell in the West Indies? How much did he bury? Did he bury it on other islands in the region, like Block Island off of Rhode Island, or the Thimble Islands off of Connecticut? Or, as some reports indicate, did he stop off the coast of Nova Scotia and bury it on Oak Island?
Yes, he did, and that's the end of our series. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for listening. That will be the question that follows, the threads through this whole narrative.
Mm-hmm. So this is about Kidd's treasure.
Yes.
I didn't realize that. It's so funny. I watched so many seasons of this, and I'm like, that did not absorb into my brain.
Well, at least initially. And it's interesting because Oak Island is one of those times where we get to see a narrative and a mythology build and change and adapt.
Yeah, because in my mind, they were always talking about the Knights Templar.
Yes, and we'll get to the Knights Templar. But at least when the very first explorers on Oak Island start digging, they're not thinking about the Freemasons. They're not thinking about the Knights Templar or King Solomon's treasure or anything like that. They're thinking about Captain Kidd.
Okay.
All of that will come later as the story evolves, and we're going to follow the evolution step by step. So Captain Kidd's treasure might be on Oak Island. But how does a famous pirate become embroiled in the legends of an uninhabited island here? That story starts less than a century after Kidd's hanging with a farm boy named Daniel McGinnis. A teenager raised on farm work, physical labor, doing it every day, McGinnis took his leisure time very seriously. When you're up at daybreak, you're working on your family farm, downtime, it's hard to come by. Mm-hmm. So any chance he got, he took a rowboat and went fishing. One day, in 1795, his fishing excursion took him to the shores of Oak Island, a 140-acre island in Mahone Bay off the coast of Nova Scotia. It is one of over 350 islands in the bay.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Really?
Yes. What's that look for?
The show makes it seem like it's like the only island around.
Oh no! Like if you actually look, it's what you know how there's the New England type of coast, and there's just all these little islands strewn about. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's that. It's not like one fucking island out there.
Okay,
no.
This really lowers the chances of the treasure being on this island. There's so many islands. Okay.
Oak Island is a small, mile-long island. Just under half a mile wide, and as you said, EJ, it's shaped vaguely like a baby elephant with a short trunk.
Yeah, it should be called Little Elephant Island. That's what I think.
It really should be. Mm-hmm. The island takes its name from the red oak trees that grow there. Now, at the time, there were 3 tall oak trees called the signal trees that made it really easy to spot Oak Island and tell it apart from other islands in the bay. This is one of the reasons why people say that Captain Kidd might have buried treasure there, because there was a very distinct marker that differentiated Oak Island from the other surrounding islands. There's a claim that only Oak Island supports oak trees, none of the others do, and that the ones that grow there are non-native to the region, but that's just straight up incorrect. Coastal Nova Scotia is an acacia forest which supports conifers and broadleaf trees and makes the perfect habitat for oaks, maples, birches, and the fast-growing pine trees. The island itself is comprised of 2 higher land masses. These would be the head and the rump of the elephant. if you will, with a lowland swamp in between forming the elephant's neck. The most famous beach, Smith's Cove, lies between the elephant's trunk and its forehead. If you imagine the trunk kind of curling upward.
Yeah.
We don't know if Daniel McGinnis landed at the cove or in the swamp, but the island is only a mile long and half a mile wide, so he probably walked the whole thing looking for his fishing spot. And during this expedition, something caught McGinnis's eye and gave him a reason to set aside his rod and tackle. Because on the southwest side of the island, near where the elephant's mouth would be, he spotted a shallow depression in the ground. And standing above this circular depression was a large oak tree in a clearing all by itself. On one of the stouter horizontal branches, the end had been cut off. So it just terminated with a cut branch. And that was about 15 feet over the ground. Now, according to some of the legends, McGinnis also found a block and tackle connected to the tree branch. The type of thing that you would use if you were moving something heavy. If this is true, it's implied that somebody purposefully cut that branch and used it to hoist something into that circular area.
Was the circular area, did you say it was like a depression in the ground
It's
a little
just
bit?
a little depression. You know how ground just kind of sinks sometimes when there's not a good support underneath it? That's all it is.
That's what it seemed like? Okay.
Yeah, it's not, we're not talking about like a foot deep or something like that. It's just as you're looking at all of the ground around there, there's this one area that you're like, oh, it dips there.
Okay.
Okay.
Curious.
Darcy O'Connor, writing The Secret Treasure of Oak Island, calls the detail of the block and tackle apocryphal and believes that this detail was made up and added to the story later. Get used to me saying that because the story of Oak Island is the story of constant embellishment. Now, it's fitting that the legend of the Oak Island treasure starts with a guy fishing, since so many fishing stories are very exaggerated.
That's right. That's the way it is.
Oh, I couldn't get that fish. It's 15 pounds and it snapped my line. Oh, man, I almost had it. You know, it was like a piece of dental floss, just cut it in half.
Yeah. When in actuality, he did catch an oak tree.
Yeah.
He caught a branch.
Yeah, you got your line all tangled up in one of the branches of the trees on the shore, and you were like, oh, damn it.
Well, I'll just say it was a big fish.
I do some fishing. And sometimes, you know, as you're fishing at the creek side or whatever, people will walk by and be like, have you caught anything today? And you don't want to be like, no. You know, you do kind of want to say, oh, yeah, you know, I'm having a really good day. I got all kinds of stuff. I'm a very competent person, instead of being like, I don't know what I'm doing.
I'm lost.
Yeah. So, you know, I mean, you think about Daniel McGinnis there. You're like, oh, you should have seen what I found. There was this tree, there was a pulley, there was a sign on it there that said, don't look for buried treasure here. There's definitely nothing in this spot, you know? It's safe to say that McGinnis, growing up in the late 1700s, would have been very familiar with pirate stories and lore. He knew about the legend of Captain Kidd's treasure. For years, speculation has been swirling in the region, you know, what we were talking about before. What if Kidd hadn't stopped at just Garnier's Island, but had hidden his treasure in other places in this area? And what if McGinnis had just found one of those spots? The thing about buried treasure stories is that they tend to be told and retold again and again and again. Less than a century after Captain Kidd was hanged over the River Thames, this was already happening with his legacy. Stories, there's more treasure. It's just waiting for the right person. All you need is a shovel, you know? This is gossip all over New England, Canada at the time. So the next day, McGinnis returned to Oak Island and brought with him two of his friends, Anthony Vaughan and John Smith. Now, Vaughan was the youngest, if later researchers were correct. It seems likely that he was Anthony Vaughan Jr., the son of a landowner in Nova Scotia. It's unclear what their trade was. Some accounts put that his father, Vaughan Sr., was actually at the discovery, but Vaughan Jr. is the one who talked about it in an 1862 article in the Liverpool Transcript. So to me, it makes sense if it was Von Jr. and the whole thing was just kind of like a fun adventure for some kids, which is kind of what it is right now. Like, they're just like, oh, I think something's buried here. Let's go have fun.
Yeah.
John Smith, the other boy, was likely the son of Richard Smith, for whom Smith's Cove on Oak Island is named. The Smiths were fish merchants or fishmongers, meaning that they didn't go fishing, but they bought fish from the anglers and sold the fish at market. So they were like the original go-between there.
And they're the first to open up the store on the island as well, called Poke Island. Poke Island.
Yes. The first to incorporate the Hawaiian grain and fish bowls.
Yes, they were the very first.
Canadian delicacies.
Yeah, it all started right there.
Right. John Smith was also the oldest of the boys at 20 years old.
Oh wow, what is he doing hanging out with a bunch of little kids?
They're not. They're like teenagers.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I thought it was like a couple of 8-year-olds and like a 20-year-old.
No.
Okay.
They're teenagers.
Okay.
Yeah.
When you say kids, I think like little kids.
Oh no. They're
Okay, I got you.
No, do you think like an 8-year-old piloted a boat? Over onto this island?
Yeah, back then.
Yeah, maybe. I guess. Yeah, you might be right. Using shovels, the boys started digging out this circular depression. They found that the soil was soft and loosely packed, and they were able to very quickly dig down 2 feet. 2 feet down, their shovels hit against stone. And as they started to dig out the stone, they tried to find the edges of it. Initially they thought, oh, we just hit a rock. But then they realized something. That stone that they had found was just one in a series of flagstones, all laid out in a single layer at the 2-foot mark in the hole. Do you know what flagstones are?
They're just stones that are flat.
Yeah, it's a kind of generic word that we use to describe a flat stone. Mm-hmm. But they're the kind of stones that you would use for walkways.
Definitely, yeah.
The ones that the boys found were specifically limestone.
Okay.
So they dig down 2 feet, and then there's a layer of limestone exactly at the 2-foot mark.
And are those limestones, you might not know this, but is it like normal for limestone to be on the island? Is it present naturally on the island?
This is another one of those funny things where some people will swear that limestone only came from the mainland of Nova Scotia and was not present on Oak Island, and those claims are false.
Okay.
Limestone, this type of limestone, is commonly found on Oak Island.
Okay.
Yes. Mm-hmm. They clear these stones, and the boys are left with a circular 13-foot shaft. To them, this looked like a refilled hole, and wow, do we need to get used to using the words hole and shaft with a straight face. So,
because we are children, we're not going to. We are extremely immature, so...
Well, this is kind of Oak Island, too. There are moments in Oak Island where they're narrating things, and they're like... They will be drilling down as deep as possible into the shaft in hopes of locating the bottom of the hole, and I'm always like, heh.
I know. That's a really wide hole.
Yeah.
They always say things like that, like, oh, it's a big hole, and things like that. I'm like, oh my god, you guys. We are not mature enough to watch Oak Island.
Man, good job with the shaft there.
Yeah. Wow, what a big drill you brought.
So obviously these boys were all excited about their hole.
That's so weird. What a weird thing to say. Oh my god, no. Jesus Christ.
Normally, a 2-foot dig producing nothing would have made them just give up. Mm-hmm. But finding the flagstones was encouragement. This was a sign, man, maybe there's something else here.
Because it looks like it was put there by someone.
It looks like you
circular thing.
Yeah, I mean, you dug down, and then suddenly it almost looks like there's a platform of stones, or like a walkway, porch almost, you know?
A little patio.
For weeks, they continued their dig in their free time, and they excavated all the way down to 10 feet. And here, they found another platform, but this one was oak logs packed together and embedded in the walls. Mm. Now, this platform seemed like a scaffolding or a way to kind of keep the hole structurally sound. Because, if you start digging down far enough, what's going to happen is you're getting more and more risk that the walls are going to cave in on you. Mm-hmm. And so these trees, these oak logs, were helping to support the diameter of the hole. Mm-hmm. Just like the flagstones, this encouraged the boys. We have to go deeper. Because if somebody went to all the trouble of digging a hole, putting an oak platform down, and then putting flagstones on top of it, there has to be something else down there.
Yeah.
With each shovelful of dirt, they're growing more and more certain the bottom of this is Captain Kidd's treasure. Just makes sense. So they keep digging. The hole is now deep enough that they need ladders to reach the bottom or to climb out. Instead of throwing loose dirt up over their shoulders in piles, they have to put it in bags and then hoist them out.
Oh my God. Oh, they're so lucky there wasn't a cave in.
Yeah, I know. They could have all died there.
I mean, this happens on the beach all the time.
Yeah, exactly. You're digging a hole in the sand and then all of a sudden everything's just caves in and you're
dead. Mm-hmm.
This started as a fun distraction for them, and it's quickly becoming an obsessive hunt instead. And remarkably, after another 10 feet, they hit a second platform. Again, this one's made of oak logs, tightly packed together. We're now 20 feet below the surface. To the boys, these platforms were serving as more structural support, keep the tunnel secured. The walls of the pit here, they thought were hard packed with clay. And as they continued their excavation, they became convinced that they saw tool marks on the walls, like pickaxes or shovels.
Wow.
You can just imagine, right? You imagine them building this story in their head as they're going. 10 feet down, 30 feet total.
Oh my God.
Another oak platform. The wood for this one is rotting, and they realize that it's probably been there a long time. Decades, long enough for this wood to start to rot. About 30 feet down, they'd also hit the water line, which is a more likely cause of the rotten logs.
That is what I was going to say. When are they going to hit the water? Because they're on an island.
Yeah, about 30 feet down is where you hit the water line in Oak Island.
Okay.
Yep. So now you've got these three boys who have been spending all of their free time digging this hole. They've come up with some flagstones and some logs. Their pit is 30 feet deep, and the journey to the bottom now has to be done with ropes and ladders. 30 feet, right? Like, that's deeper than our house.
Mm-hmm. That's crazy. And these three teenagers did this.
Yes. But this whole thing has gotten out of hand, if you get the pun. This whole thing.
Oh, this whole thing. I gotcha. Good job. Nice.
Realizing that they were in over their heads.
Ha! Good one. All right. Joke Island.
Yeah, Joke Island. Come see me. Joke Island. Realizing, this is kind of outside what we're capable of dealing with, they finally decided, we should probably tell our parents. I assume that their parents knew that they were on Oak Island, but maybe not. Maybe the kids just wandered away for a while and came back dirty, and they were like, that's fine.
That's just what you do.
Now, remember, these are farmers, these are merchants, they're hardworking people, they got to make a living, they come home exhausted, and they really don't have time for their kids' shenanigans. Mm-hmm. And I mean, to them, too, the boys dug a 30-foot hole, there's nothing in it but logs. Not like the treasure of the Sierra Madre down there, Nobody was interested in helping them. But the boys were adamant that they had stumbled upon something huge. After all, who would go to all the trouble to dig a hole and fill it in with structural platforms and flagstones if there wasn't anything to find? They started referring to the area as the money pit to keep their spirits up.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, just got to dig the money pit. There's money at the bottom of the pit. They want to keep digging, and if no one will help them, that just means more treasure for themselves when they find it. Mm-hmm. And so John Smith, 20 years old, purchased a small plot of land on Oak Island. His property was listed on the deed under the innocuous name Lot 18 and sold for £7 and 10 shillings, or about £1,000 in today's money. Apparently, the leaser never visited the property or asked, hey, why is there giant fucking hole in this land. But, with that, the money pit's future was secured. Although it would take the boys another 8 years until they made their next discovery, one which convinced them that they were on the right path and riches were below their feet, under the soil of Oak Island. And we'll talk about that discovery next time.
Awesome.
Yeah.
We'll discover that next time.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
I just don't understand how pirates wanted to dig 30 plus feet down to bury treasure.
This is one of the greatest problems with the whole Oak Island scenario, right? Because at this point, and we're going to talk about it as we go through everything, but at this point, basically all of Oak Island has been dug up after one fashion or another. At least 2, 10, 20 feet, whatever. And you eventually have to ask, what was the technology that was available to the pirates, to the Knights Templar, to whoever who were supposedly digging here, and would they have been capable of doing this?
I know. And like, listen, I really think that they probably buried these things on these islands to be able to grab them quickly when they came back around. I'll put it 4 feet underground.
I think it was deeper than that, but I don't think it was that much deeper.
Okay. It just doesn't make... And so now we have these guys with these all this equipment, drilling and hauling and doing all this stuff. And I'm like, what are you going to find?
Right.
You're going down 80 feet. I know
80 feet is shallow.
I know.
Too, when we get there.
Yeah, and I know they think that they're going to find like tunnels and systems and things, but like, how did people with shovels make these things?
Yeah, and I mean, we haven't even talked about the alleged network of flood tunnels that are under there, and the booby traps that are supposedly under there that they would have laid, and all of that stuff that are very, very advanced if they exist. And you have to ask the question, like, why would the pirates go to all of this trouble? How much manpower would be required here to do this? I know, right? Yeah. Yes, I am very skeptical that there is anything under Oak Island, and we'll talk about that. Yeah. But that's almost not the point, too. Like what fascinates me about Oak Island is, how do you take this kind of story? Like, there was some treasure on Garnier's Island, and 200 plus years go by, and suddenly we are into... Yeah, we got to dig 200 feet under the surface because that's where he would have put it. Like, it just doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make sense.
So how does this mythology evolve? How did this happen? And why are we still digging in this island even after 200 odd years of nothing?
I have to think that there's a good reason for it.
There is a good reason. Yeah, there's a good reason, and we'll talk about it, and it will unravel as we go.
Nice.
But yeah, I think it's important to also realize that the Garnier treasure was not buried more than 20 feet underground.
I'm not surprised to hear that at all.
Yeah.
Digging is hard. Digging is exhausting.
Yes. It was. Garnier's treasure was buried, though. They did bury that treasure. But yeah, I mean, I think that they buried it 18 inches underground. They did, because why would you?
You bury it as much as you need to,
right? And
then you leave because you've got other things going on.
Well, and also there becomes a problem of diminishing returns, right? Like, the more important thing is that nobody knows where to look. Yes. Not that people are maybe going to dig all over the place and dig too shallow. You just don't tell anybody where it is. That's better than burying it super, super deep.
Right. Yes, exactly. The key is for people to have no idea.
Right. And Captain Kidd's not an idiot.
Right.
But so yeah, we will get into it. We will talk about all of that as we go. But in the next episode, we're going to talk about what they find as they continue, and we're going to talk about the other people that they start to collect. Because right now it's just 3 boys. But in order to really get to the next step, they're going to need more. And so they're going to need to get some other people on their side.
Cool. And then is this when we start to get into the name salad?
Oh, there's going to be name salad all over this. I did my absolute best to not just spew out a whole bunch of names at you. And I think I did a pretty good job.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, I mean, look, the fact of the matter is, this story, if you don't count the Captain Kidd part, the story of Oak Island starts in 1795, and it has not ended. But at the very least, the last set of treasure hunters arrived on the island in 2013. So, yeah, I mean, you're talking about, what's that actual number, EJ? Do that math for me.
324 years.
You're not even close. 218. But that's the thing, though. You're talking about 218 years of people and generations of people. You know, some of them have been on the island for a long time. Some of them have passed it to their kids. Some of these are just people who come in for a little while and go out. We're going to talk about a bunch of different people as we go.
Awesome.
And we will also talk about all of the rumors that circulate, and a lot of them I'm going to say, this is a rumor, just like the block and tackle. This is a rumor. There's no evidence that it's true. So I think it's fitting that we started with six have died, the seventh will die and reveal the treasure, but nobody actually said that.
Just the narrator on the History Channel.
Yeah, exactly. Just the narrator and a very good writer for the History Channel. So
I'm going to open up a cafe, and it's going to have like poetry readings, and there's going to be poetry night. There's going to be like an open mic night. We're going to do coffee. You know, there's going to be a lot of like fun little lights and little you can sit on the floor and get all cozy. And I'm going to call it Folk Island.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's really sweet, isn't it?
Yeah.
I feel like somebody needs to like go to Oak Island and like, well, no, don't do that, because Oak Island's been pillaged enough as it is. Go somewhere close to Nova Scotia and put in all these cute little stores and shops that are just like fun name plays on Oak Island.
Halifax, I believe.
Yeah, I think Halifax is the closest. So I'm going to tell Halifax what to do. They need to do this.
I am sure that if you go to Halifax, there is Oak Island stuff there.
Oh, yeah, probably.
Because that's the one, like, Halifax is right, you know, you have Oak Island in the bay. The mainland is Halifax.
Yeah.
I did hear that they have a Star Wars festival.
No
there.
way.
Yeah, they have a Star Wars festival that is specifically focused on the Sith from the new movies.
Really?
Yeah, the ones with Kylo Ren and all of that, yeah.
Oh, yeah? What's that called?
Snoke Island.
Very good. I knew you were going somewhere with this. Very good. All right. Well, we'll stop torturing people with that.
Send us your Oak Island puns.
Yeah.
slayingmonsterspodcast@gmail.com.
Yeah, please do.
I know you got them. I believe our listeners will come through for us.
I think they will.
All right.
All right. Thanks for listening, everybody.
Thank you so much for listening. We'll catch you next time.
Yeah.
Be safe out there.
Safe. Bye.
Thanks for listening to Slaying Monsters, the Paranormal History Podcast. If you like the podcast, there's a couple ways to show your support. You can tell your friends, you can leave us a rating and review on your podcast platform, or you can head over to slayingmonsterspodcast.com and click on the Support Us button to leave a donation. For questions, suggestions, and other feedback, reach out to us, slayingmonsterspodcast@gmail.com, and stay up to date by following us on Instagram @slayingmonsterspodcast. Your support helps us grow, and we are truly grateful to have our listeners and community.